A ferry pilot delivers airplanes for other people. If it's a plane that's in, one country, it needs to go to another country, usually because it's been sold and the new owner doesn't want to be the one that's stupid enough to fly it over the ocean. That's when they call a ferry pilot who is stupid enough to fly a small plane over the ocean, and that's where I come in. I'm a lot pickier on what I'll do these days because I don't need to prove anything anymore. I've done it over 100 times, and I've really risked my life far too many times. And but I'll still take a trip if it's a grand adventure and if it's a really cool airplane I want to fly, or going to a really cool destination. And plus, I just can't seem to stop it. I'm good at it. It's kind of what I was born for. I was literally in the middle of the North Atlantic. Um, there was no way someone was going to come and get me at any time. I didn't think so. So the ferry tanks are pressurized by a scoop of air that runs into a line into the tank, which pressurizes it just from the plane going through the air. And I unhooked that hose. I suspected that might be the problem, and it wasn't working. We weren't getting that high pressure air from outside. And I sat and thought about it for a little while. I didn't allow myself to panic. Just I'm really good at that. I've had a lot of emergencies, and I've learned over the years to take any panic and fear, just take that, set that aside. We'll deal with that later. Right now, I have to focus on the problem. And because maybe there's a way out. And I sat and I looked at it, and I had this hose in my hand, and I'm like, I need to pressurize this big metal tank, a 90-gallon fuel tank. How do I do that? And I guess I thought, it's like, if I can blow up an air mattress, maybe I can blow up a steel tank. And I just stuck that hose in my mouth and started blowing. And after a few minutes, some fuel moved, and I realized it worked. I was like, hallelujah. And then I did some calculations and realized I hadn't moved very much fuel at all, and realized that I was going to have to blow into that tank all night. So I had to sit there at 15,000 feet with no oxygen, blowing into that tank for 8.5 hours with no help. And gas fumes in the planes. I'm at high altitude, no oxygen, got super hypoxic, passed out 3 times. Um, but there's nothing else to do. You don't really have a choice. You have to just dig inside yourself and find a way to solve it, to survive. The weather reporting thing, that's what's also challenging as a ferry pilot, because when you're traveling these long distances in many hours, I mean, I've had legs that are up to 14 and a half hours long. So by the you before your flight, you get a weather report that's already a couple of hours old, and realize you're going to get in your plane, you're going to fly for 14 hours, and then you get to your destination. You don't really know what the weather's going to be like when you get to your destination, because that weather report is 15, 16 hours old. And as you know, weather changes all the time. I mean, they can't get the afternoon right half the time on the forecast. So you have to be ready to deal with whatever you find. I love emergencies. I love the challenge. I love life and death situations. It gets me it gets me going. It's just what I live for. So I don't seek them out on purpose. My first ferry flight was in 1990, and that was before GPS was on the scene. So I have 8 crossings with nothing but a paper map, a winds aloft forecast, and a stopwatch, just like Charles Lindbergh. I mean, literally no difference. I actually have, when I started, I have less navigation equipment than they had in the 50s and 60s, because back then, when you crossed the ocean, the navigators actually used sextants. They did shoot the stars and could navigate by the stars and the sun. I didn't have a sextant, so I would just I'd get a big winds aloft forecast for the whole North Atlantic, and I would get my huge paper map out and calculate each point, what my heading's supposed to be and what the winds are going to do, and make my own call on if the weather was sufficient, and then just go for it and trust that my calculations were correct. And the problem with that back then was the winds aloft forecast is just that. It's a forecast. They don't know what the winds are going to do 10 hours from now. And if that forecast is wrong, you can be blown hundreds of miles off course, or run into a headwind you didn't anticipate. And the problem with that is, with no navigation equipment, I don't know that I'm in trouble until I'm way deep into trouble. Now with GPS, that's a lot easier. A lot of that's taken out. But back when GPS started, more pilots got killed crossing the North Atlantic because that scary part of the navigation was taken out of it. Now all these pilots who wouldn't dare doing it in the past have this magic box. Like, well, now I can't get lost. I'm brave enough to cross the North Atlantic. But that's not the only part of ferry flying. You have to be a weather expert. You have to be a maintenance expert. You have to know your plane.